Well, the Chinese economy is changing. More people there have more money to spend. And that means more opportunities for British companies to expand. In the first 8 months of this year, exports of British goods to China went up by 44%. Our business editor, Robert Peston, reports now on the strengthening trade links between Britain and China.
A Chinese nation at work. Long hours, low wages, amazing 10% a year economic growth. Hundreds of millions of people no longer dirt poor. All quite familiar, but something's stirring. There's nothing new about China as the workshop of the world. But what is new is what happens to these expensive cashmere sweaters when they leave the factory. Until recently, almost all of them were exported to the rich West. But about 24 months ago, the company that makes them made a huge push into the Chinese market. And now sales to Chinese consumers generate more than half of the manufacturer's profits. Do you think there will be much more demand, not only for your goods, but for all sorts of consumer goods within China?
In the long term, the government really needs to focus on stimulating domestic demand. This would lead to sustained economic development.
I asked China's Commerce Minister, Chen Deming, whether the country's 1.3 million citizens would start to save a bit less and consume a bit more.
In the next 5-year plan, we will consider domestic consumption as the main driving force for economic development. China's domestic market is growing very fast. In the end, it's going to become the biggest domestic market in the world.
And if China is buying, well, perhaps British companies can and should be selling more into this vast market. So here we are in the Solana shopping centre in the middle of Beijing, surrounded by well-known brands. In fact, we could almost be in the middle of Manchester. What do you think the prospects are now for British businesses in China?
I think they're great. As more and more people move into the urban areas and they become richer, they're buying more of the sorts of things that we can sell to them.
But it's very much work in progress for UK businesses trying to make money in China, because the Chinese sell £26 billion of goods and services to the UK, 3 times as much as we sell to them. This massive 1.8 million square foot development in northeast Beijing is an example of the kind of business that British companies are already winning. It's been designed by the British firm of Architect Benoy, which is working on another 200 projects throughout China. And here's the really striking thing. For all the complaints of British companies that Chinese bureaucracy can slow things up, this development will take 5 years to finish, compared with 17 years for a comparable development in the United Kingdom. The UK has a big deficit in its trade with China. Do you think that deficit will narrow?
British entrepreneurs should do more promotions of their products to the Chinese public. For example, Chinese people know French and Italian brands well, but they know very little about British brands.
Even in this traditional Beijing market, there's no shortage of Chinese entrepreneurs, taking in this instance my money. But if the UK is to have a more prosperous future, British companies have to become a bit better at pocketing Chinese cash. Robert Peston, BBC News, Beijing.